Wonderful. Well, welcome again. Thank you all for joining. We appreciate that this is day 2 and so many of you are back with us. It's wonderful to see your faces. It's wonderful to welcome you into our APS team. And just a really deep bow of gratitude for all of you and your dedication to the profession already prior to the first day of school. My name is Anna Kay. I'm a behavior support specialist, and I'm going to be joined by my brilliant colleague, Molly Keys, who's running our tech for us today. So if you have questions as we're talking, we're going to be utilizing the chat a lot today. So either myself or Molly will respond to your questions. This is sort of part 2 of yesterday's building block session, where Mark and I really dove into the importance of routines and also relationship building. If you missed yesterday's session, please don't worry, you won't be lost. We have plenty of scaffolds to catch you up. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Today, our structure is going to be scenarios based. Let's talk a little bit about what that means. So today we're going to be examining various classroom scenarios. These scenarios are made up, right? They are hypothetical in nature, but they're likely something very similar to what you might see or experience in your own classroom. So in each scenario, we're going to work together as thought partners or as brain buddies. If you were in my class, I would call you brain buddies, to determine if in each of these scenarios, the teacher's mindset or their system of routines or their relationship building influence the situation. Some of these scenarios may have come up in my own classroom. Like I said yesterday, I've been in the profession for a long time and had the opportunity to make a lot of wonderful mistakes and learn from them. So some of these are mistakes I've made myself, and hopefully they will help you pause and reflect on what I could have done better. So we're going to structure our day today by just kind of briefly going over some of the key concepts that Mark and I covered yesterday. Then we're going to look at some scenarios as a whole group, be brain buddies all together. And then wonderful Molly is going to organize you all into breakout rooms, and you're going to have the opportunity to look at some scenarios with your colleagues in small groups. So let's do a quick recap of yesterday. Mark pointed out the importance of reflection, right? How important it is for us as professionals, whether we're in year 1, day 1, or year 25, day 25, to constantly be reflecting on our practice. So Mark and I have devised 4, it's a little early, 4 categories for you all that have reflection questions embedded within them. This is a lot of reflecting. We're not going to ask you to do all of this right now, but Molly did put in a link to our slide deck. And I'm going to encourage you to keep this in a safe place, and maybe throughout the year as you are sort of kind of building that structure of how you engage with reflection, coming back to these questions, right? And maybe picking a few to sit with if you're the type of person that likes to journal, maybe writing out some responses to these reflection questions. Maybe if you have a mentor, this is a place to kind of hold a conversation around one of these reflection questions, really to engage with them in the way that feels most productive for you. But for right now, we are going to look at that first section that just is labeled reflection. There are 2 questions there. And I'm going to give us about 5 minutes to just reflect on those questions. The questions under section 2, 3, and 4, again, you can come back to later. But right now, we're just focused on the reflection 1 box. The questions being, how do you want your students to remember their experience in your classroom? And how do you want to feel at the end of the day? I'm going to give us about 5 minutes to just sit with that. That's a lie, 4 minutes. I'm going to give us 4 minutes to sit with those questions. I won't ask you to share them. This is just for you. And just take some time to journal or doodle or think about, how do you want your students to remember their experience in your classroom? And how do you want to feel at the end of each school day? I'll give us 4 minutes. We'll take about 30 more seconds. I invite you to just come to a stopping point, and bring your attention back to the space. Thank you for taking time to do this. Um, it is really hard to incorporate reflection into our day as we get very busy. So I appreciate you engaging in some really intentional reflection right now. And again, I encourage you to return to your answer that you just wrote down, maybe on those really hard days, or maybe as you're kind of feeling those first day jitters, come back to your response to these questions, or maybe re-answer this question in those moments, just as a tool for you to have. So, reflection, 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 right? As we just preached before, and as Mark said yesterday, is an incredible aspect of our profession. And we're going to kind of do that. We're going to use that sort of reflective mindset today as we approach these scenarios. One of the key phrases that I would teach my second graders on the first day of school is mistakes mean we're learning. And it was always really wonderful as the year went on, and they would say that back to me, like when I made a mistake, mistakes mean we're learning, Mrs. K. Um, and it's important for us to remember too, right? We're going to make mistakes, right? As teachers, as humans on this planet, that's a given. And not even maybe mistakes per se, but we will gather new information throughout our career, and change our practice accordingly, right? That's one of the really beautiful things about the profession, that we all have the opportunity to continue learning from our colleagues, from our students, from professional resources, books, articles, and just overall experience, and integrating that new information, those new ideas into our practice as we continue to improve. So we're going to go into these scenarios with that mindset, right? That we are continuing to integrate new information into our practice. So let's go over the directions, what we're going to be doing here. We're going to be looking at 2 scenarios as a whole group, and then you're going to look at 3 in small groups. They all have the same directions. For each scenario, we're going to reflect on what happened using these guided questions below. And we're going to give you a cheat sheet so that you have some of the slides from yesterday. If you can't remember them off the top of your head, they might be resources to help you answer some of these questions. And I'm going to ask Molly when she's able to pop that cheat sheet into the chat. So as we look at this scenario, I want us to identify and explain how the scenario reflects an issue, perhaps with the teacher's mindset, with the class routines, or with relationship building. And then what could we do if we were the teacher in that situation? What could we do to make the situation better? And this might come from some information that we shared with you in day 1, or just your own professional insight and experience. So let's look at this first scenario together. Yin is a kindergartner who did not attend preschool. At home, her parents speak Vietnamese. Yin does have really strong receptive and expressive English skills, but she rarely communicates orally with her peers or the teacher. She typically kind of stands off to the side and watches her peers at recess. And in the classroom, she doesn't feel comfortable sitting on the rug with her peers, and will only really complete work when it's an independent task. Recently, Yin has been very emotional when she's dropped off in the morning, and will kind of cry on and off throughout the day. This kindergarten teacher has 25 other students, and she has one EA that's with her most of the day. She typically kind of just ignores Yin's crying because it does stop eventually, but it's starting to really wear on her and disrupt the learning. So with this scenario in mind, let's take a moment to think. What's happening here? Perhaps could it be driven by teacher mindset, class routines, or relationship building? And what could we do to make the situation better? I'm going to give us all a minute of think time. And then I'm going to invite you to either use the chat or raise a hand and unmute and share your ideas here. What could be done to make this experience more comfortable for Yin? Now I'm just going to open it up to the group. We're going to be brain buddies and thought partners together. Again, you're welcome to use the chat if that feels more comfortable, or raise your hand and unmute and share what could be done to help this kiddo. I see relationship building, absolutely. Building a relationship with Yin and including her cultural background into the classroom community. Alyssa, that was well said. 2 times 10 strategy. Noelle, absolutely. That's a great one. If you missed that yesterday, I just want to expand on Noelle's answer. 2 times 10 strategy is a great strategy to use, especially with kiddos that we know that relationship building is really necessary. Maybe it's that student that's kind of closed off and we're not really getting to, or a student who's maybe demonstrating really challenging behaviors, and we just need to get to know the student better. So the 2 times 10 strategy is making an effort to spend 2 minutes with that student, 2 uninterrupted minutes if possible, with that student for 10 consecutive days. That's a great idea. So I see we touched on a lot of this, that absolutely. For Yin, we probably need to get to know her better and her cultural background, right? And this can be done through explicit activities, through daily classroom situations, maybe the opportunity during snack time to sit down next to her and just talk to her, maybe about what she's eating, the snack she brought, what her favorite thing to do is with her family, just sort of having those authentic, unplanned conversations. And even behavior redirection. So we're not really redirecting her emotions in this scenario, but maybe it's an opportunity when she is feeling sad to really connect with her, let her know that this is a safe space, that either you as the teacher or the EA is going to spend some time sitting with her, and that she is safe to feel those emotions in your space. And I see Isabel said that relationship building, she's having trouble adjusting and needs someone to be on her side and make her feel comfortable. Absolutely. Then she can be comfortable with opening up with other students as well. That was very eloquently said. Thank you. And Christy, you pointed out classroom routines, that she has a playground or room buddy. That's a great idea. That is not one that I thought of. So thank you for bringing that up. And I put this one because I wanted to bring up the 2 times 10 strategy, but you beat me to it. And Kathleen pointed out that this is kind of a mix between mindset and relationship building. However, a teacher needs to build a foundation in relationship with a student, so the comfort level is put at ease during drop off and easy for her overall transition. Absolutely. And wouldn't this be a great opportunity to get to know the family better as well? APS has a lot of resources. If you do not share a common language with the family, there are translation services. There are ways to get interpreters. So if you run into this and you're not able to communicate with your family, ask your office staff and they can help direct you to some of these resources. You guys are rock stars. Let's go on to the next one. This is in a 3rd grade classroom. Now I want to preface this with this teacher, Mrs. Phillips, gets frustrated in this scenario. And I just want to make it very clear that her frustration is valid. She is a human being. It is okay for her to feel frustrated. As teachers, we're going to feel all the feelings that we feel as human beings in our classroom, right? And that is absolutely okay. I want to validate that this experience is frustrating for her. And when we look at this, we're going to put sort of that lens that we did in the last one, right? How can we help these students? But also, what can we do for Mrs. Phillips so that she is able to kind of manage that frustration in a healthy way? Okay, so third grade. Mrs. Phillips is a third grade general education teacher. She has a class of 26 students. 9 of those students receive special education services for either ELA or math or both. Mrs. Phillips starts her science block at 1:15, but her 9 students who receive special ed services come back to her classroom at 1 o'clock. When they enter the classroom, she always shouts pretty loudly over the rest of the class, "Get out a book and read silently for 15 minutes. Don't make any noise. My students are working." The 9 students who enter the room either talk to their classmates or put their heads on their desk or walk around the room. The noise level in the classroom gradually grows louder as more students begin talking and walking around the room. "That's it," Mrs. Phillips yells. Put your heads on your desk. You obviously can't handle today's science experiment." Okay, with that picture in mind, we're going to come back to these guiding questions. Does this scenario reflect an issue perhaps with mindset, class routines, relationship building? A combination of the 3, perhaps? And what could be done to make this situation better? I'll give you a moment of think time, and then we'll share out again. We'll go ahead and open it up. Again, you're welcome to use the chat or raise your hand and unmute. Oh, I see Isabel right out of the gate. Mindset. Definitely work on relationship building and class routines in order to solve the problem, though. Mindset and routine. My students are working. Absolutely. Ooh, that one was hard to type even. She's placing 9 students outside of the group. The incoming group needs to be welcomed and guided to the activity, not just brushed off. Yep, this might be an issue with how we're approaching the kids. Warm welcome. These students are hers as well, I see, yes. Maybe let's think about what they've been asked to do when they come in. Take out a book and read. Could there be a challenge here with that academic request, right? Perhaps when we're thinking about routines, we can think about, is that working? Could there be something else that they do when they come in the classroom? Is this an opportunity for them to have some choice in these 5 minutes in between when they return from the classroom and start their science work? Yep, absolutely. Oh, these are great ideas. Thank you. Now, I also, before we go on to sort of the next slides, I also want to talk about the teacher right now. Ms. Phillips is frustrated. And again, I want to validate that that's okay to be frustrated, but perhaps this frustration could have been dealt with differently, right? So if Ms. Phillips is right now, she is noticing that she is elevated, she is frustrated. What is something that she could do if she recognizes that her emotions right now are up here? Take some deep breaths. Absolutely. That's incredibly important. This could be something that she does alone, right? Maybe she does some 5-finger breathing where she breathes in as she goes up her thumb, breathes out as she goes down, and she just does that to herself. Maybe she tells her class, you know what? I am feeling frustrated. Maybe this is an opportunity to say, I don't like the way I just raised my voice. I did that because I'm frustrated. I think it would be helpful if we all took some deep breaths. Don't make an extreme decision, right? Absolutely. Take a brain break with students, Laura. Exactly. Maybe she recognizes that she needs to take a break and she needs to go get a drink of water from her water bottle, refill her coffee, ask another teacher, hey, can you help me? Can you give me 5 minutes? Finding that buddy teacher to help her out. Great, so I'm going to go through these very quickly because we touched on all of them. And let's get into the breakout rooms. Okay, I said that you were going to have 30 minutes. I apologize that that is now a lie. You are only going to have 20 minutes because time is weird. It always goes by so fast. You'll have about 20 minutes. If you don't get through all 3 scenarios, that's a-okay. Molly's going to put you into breakout rooms. You're going to be in a room with between 3 and 5 of your colleagues. You're going to use that cheat sheet that Molly dropped into the what's it called? Into the chat. And it looks like this. It has the same directions that we were just using. It has a few of the slides from yesterday. This is the cheat sheet part. If you don't remember the slides, you have some tips here. And then you have 3 scenarios. They're on pages 4, 5, and 6. We're going to ask you to read through those scenarios with your group, spend some time discussing, just like we did here in the large room. This will give you about 7 minutes per scenario. If you get to all 3, that's great. If the conversation is rich and you only get to 2, that is just fine as well. Again, use the information that we talked about yesterday, but also your own expertise, your own professional insight to decide what could be done to make this situation better. I just want to drop in a helpful reminder that some of these groups will be up to 5 people, and just being mindful of the number of people that are in your space and making sure everybody has an opportunity to talk and share their ideas. It is 8:33. We will come back at about 8:50. Oh, I just cut your time even more. I'm sorry about that. About 8:50 so that we can discuss before we send you to your next session. What questions do you have for me before I release you? All right. If you have a question, come back to the main room. We'll answer it. Molly and I will be here. Enjoy this time with your colleagues. Welcome back. Thank you everyone for coming back to us. You can always kind of tell when someone was like mid-conversation. I'm sorry. I'm sorry we had to rip you away from the rich conversations you were having. We'll give everybody just a second to come all the way back with us. We'll wrap up here. So if you are, not if you are joining us, because you're all joining us, because you can hear me. Now that you are back, welcome back. I hope this experience was an opportunity to connect with some old friends or perhaps some friends that you just met. This is a wonderful opportunity to make connections and build community with colleagues that maybe aren't necessarily just at your school site. One of the great things about APS, like Mr. Elder said, being kind of a small village in a way. So welcome back. I want to make sure I get you out of here a little bit early because I know you have a back-to-back session here at 9. But before we close out, first I want to ask if you have any sort of lingering questions that arose during your conversation, something you would like to bring to the whole group. I'll just leave some wait time. If any of those questions exist, you're welcome to put them in the chat or just raise your hand and unmute. Or you're welcome to email both Molly and myself. On the last slide, we'll share our contact information. Yes, I see Stephen St. John.
I'm muted. That's my husband's name. For some reason,
Gotcha.
my Google didn't. I'm Lily.
Hi, Lily.
Thinking about that one first scenario that you shared with us about transitions,
Uh-huh.
when there are pullouts or when certain students leave the room and come back, do you have any advice for how to build routines for that? Um,
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great question. And that is kind of, at least for me, when I was first starting my career as an educator, those transitions were hard, right? That's a space where in a very short amount of time, a lot can kind of go wrong. And so I think it's really important that we're all kind of thinking forward to like, how could this look? What's really important is making sure that students have something to do, something productive to do. And this could be maybe during those transitions, if you have certain kids coming in and out of the classroom, making sure they know exactly what their role is when they enter the classroom. So whether that be an academic task or perhaps it's a special job like making sure the plants are watered, checking the soil with your finger in the plants to make sure they have enough water, or doing a quick cubby check to make sure their cubby is organized before they come back to the space. Maybe it is something like setting up for the next activity. Um, Whatever it is something that you need to have done, right? It's helpful for you, but it is also something that the students are interested in engaging in right away, right? We know if we tell some of our students just get a book out and read, if that is not a motivating activity, that's could be a potential pitfall for that student, right? And this can also be something as a group. This is a good way, a good conversation to have to build community with students. And maybe students could come up with a list of when I come back to the classroom, before I get directions, these are the choices I have to work on. And that can be kind of something that you co-construct with students, perhaps.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Those are kind of general answers. And it's Lily, right? Is that correct? So Lily, if you have a specific scenario in your classroom, either Molly or myself can come out and we can take a look at it with you. And then we can kind of help you to maybe come up with a more concrete plan. Awesome. Thank you for asking that. So I know that we are short on time. I'm not going to have us do this, but I will invite you to kind of take these questions with you and kind of let them marinate throughout the day. Thinking about this experience, going through these scenarios, either in the whole group or with your colleagues, and just thinking of what information stood out to me as important? What light bulbs went off for me today? And what do I want to do with that information? Right? So some of us might be thinking about transitions, for example. What am I going to do with these new light bulbs that kind of flickered for me this morning? We won't have time right now for you to reflect on this, but again, you have this slide deck, so come back to these questions throughout the day. And finally, we so appreciate you and your commitment to the profession. We are here for you, Molly, Mark, and I, and also our colleague Angela, who's not here today. We are here to help you. So you can email us, you can go to our website. There's a link there on the slide. We also have a YouTube channel that has loads of videos and resources. We encourage you to reach out to us with questions. Email's the best way to do that. And we really look forward to continuing this conversation with you throughout the school year. And we're here if you need us. So I will release you now. I know you have just a few minutes before your next session. Thank you all, and I will see you later throughout the day.